Zach is back. It's the Zach Gelb Show on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey.
All right, welcome back in. 609-919-9200. This is the Zach Gelb Show right here on Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. Let's talk a little Phillies. Let's talk some Eagles. In addition to some NBA playoffs with 680 The Fan in Atlanta. That, of course, is John Kincade, and he does a great podcast with Shaquille O'Neal. John's going to hop on board with us right now and spend a few minutes. John Kincade, appreciate a few minutes. Thanks for the time, and how are you?
Good to hear from you. Just I only will do certain interviews during my usual General Hospital viewing time, but this is well worthwhile. It's Nurses Ball week, too, so I'm glad to be able to make some time for it.
Are you a big TV watcher when it comes to non-sports shows and everything like that?
Yes.
So give me your top three shows right now. General Hospital and what else?
General Hospital since 1980. The Blacklist, How to Get Away with Murder, and Major Crimes on TNT.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not a huge TV guy other than sports. Like, I used to love 24, and then it goes off the air, then comes back on the air. I'm a big Curb Your Enthusiasm guy. It seems like whatever show I really like, they end up just canceling it or delaying it and just waiting.
Well, this summer, when got travels or anything, Designated Survivor with Kiefer Sutherland has been excellent.
Okay.
Watch that this year, too. That would have been the next one I would have given you. So I like a lot more network TV than a lot of guys my age. Most of my guys my age are watching Netflix shows and things like that. But and I can't wait to see Twin Peaks, which came back last night, because I was a big fan of that back in the day. So I'm anxious to see what that is.
Now, when you do this podcast with Shaq, is Shaq a big TV guy? I know he tried to make a few movies, and they weren't that great. But, hey, well, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, well, believe me, he was building the empire at that point, so that's part of what he did. Yes, he's a huge TV guy. He loves Scandal. He loves How to Get Away with Murder. Those are two of his favorites. He's just he's a big fan of stupid TV. Like he loves like funny he loves comedy. I mean, he loves comedy. He's fresh off the boat and stuff like that. So he's some big fans of some of those shows too.
Gotcha. How would you evaluate that studio crew on TNT? Because I think they're so funny and they're so entertaining.
They're the best at what they do, and that's why they continually win the Emmy for the best studio show. Because they figured something out, and Zach, I think a lot of people in our business are brain dead, honestly, that do what we do for a living. They forget the fun. They forget that what we're doing isn't that important. They treat a game 5 of a playoff series as if it's like nuclear physics. They get into a pitching change in the 7th inning as if it's the biggest thing that ever happened. They don't. I think that a lot of people forget the entertainment. TNT and what Ernie Johnson, who's masterful, and that entire crew. What they remember is it's entertainment. And if someone listens to your show and maybe they goof off or they laugh a little bit, from something that you got into, they will far more remember that than they will your hot take on the Phillies bullpen or the Eagles off-season move. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a release. And I think so many guys in our business have totally forgotten that.
And that's why I separated between entertaining and then who I go to if I just want that quick analysis, because you're right. Sometimes they'll do things and you'll say, okay, I just want them to speak about basketball. But the entertainment value they have, I think the two best and the two most entertaining crews right now in sports are the MLB on Fox guys, A-Rod, Pete Rose, Frank Thomas, and Kevin Burkhardt, and then the guys at TNT. Because just like when you get into those things that Shaq and Barkley get into, I kind of sense that a little bit when Pete Rose goes after Frank Thomas in the postseason. And I always laugh at that because Pete's like that crazy uncle,
Yeah, and I can tell you this, Kevin Burkhardt, and I've known Kevin
is the best
for a while since he was doing the Mets stuff. Kevin Burkhardt, to me, is one of the closest things you could get personality-wise, character-wise, to Ernie Johnson Jr. And being an Atlantan, I've known Ernie for 2 decades, and I knew his father, and who used to do the Braves games and Braves Hall of Famer. And I can tell you that Kevin Burkhardt, to me, is a new era Ernie Johnson Jr. because Kevin Burkhardt never needs to make that show or that stage about him. And that's what Ernie understands. Ernie understands the other guys are what everybody's sort of tuning in for. He's the maestro. He puts it all together, and nobody does it better. I think there's certain guys that I really admire, and Kevin Burkhart's one of the young guns that I'm a huge fan of. Dan Patrick, who was instrumental in helping to launch my national career, is another guy. I think there are guys who get it. They're willing to make other people stars around them. They're willing to share their stage, share their name, share their spotlight. And those who could get consumed by the spotlight, the Skip Baylesses of the world, tend to just never be held as high regard.
John Kincade with us right now on the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. John, let's chat some Phils, because you always grew up as a lifelong Philadelphia Philly fan. And, of course, even though you're in Atlanta, you're still rep your Philadelphia teams.
Absolutely.
The Phils, right now, they're 15-26. They've been a disaster. You knew it was going to be a bad year. But many people thought they would play a little bit better than what they're doing right now. Big picture, where's your confidence in this Phillies regime?
Well, I got to tell you this for one thing, is that I didn't expect it to be a bad year. Bad year I expect to be 95 losses. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting a 75-win team, and 75 was the number that I wanted. They're 20% of the way there. I have never seen such a fundamentally poor baseball team as Pete is running out there right now. And I asked the question the other day, what was the rush to get Pete a contract extension, to pick up his option? Like, what was the rush? What was management seeing that they were so impressed with? Because I see an undisciplined team, and I like him as a manager. I like his message. I like the way he tends to – it seems like he relates to players, media alike, and things like that. But honestly, I'm telling you, this team is playing crappy baseball, and they run the bases like the bad news bears. There's constant mental mistakes. And to me, that's teaching. That's what a young team is supposed to be learning from that manager. I'm watching it here in Atlanta with Brian Snitker. Brian Snitker takes over as an interim last year, an absolute disaster from Freddie Gonzalez, and manages to stabilize that team, get everybody rowing in the same way, does a great job, and he's got his Braves team playing much better ball than the Phillies right now, and I honestly believe those two teams should be right around each other. I'm disappointed right now, and I don't understand what the rush was to get Pete an extension for 2018.
I'll tell you why he got extended, and this is something I've saw it done with the New York Mets, and I'm a big Mets fan, and you have Terry Collins, he was there, and then he got a little bit of a contract extension as well. When they go through these rebuilds, you want the GM and the president to have a little patience, and they're having a lot of patience right now, and they want a manager that's just going to say yes to everything. I'm not saying Pete says yes to everything, but he pushes their message and that agenda, and he's not going to be in this for another 5-10 years, just like Terry Collins isn't going to be in it for the next 5-10 years with the Mets, but he's just someone that continues to push the message of the general manager, and that's why I think he's going to be around here for a few more years.
The only thing I expect, though, and I get that, and I totally buy into what you just said, and I think you have a much better handle on it than I would 750 miles south, but what I can say is, then I damn well better have a manager who is teaching the young players to play fundamentally sound baseball. Matt Stairs has done a good job. It's been pointed out on the broadcast a lot that they're a more patient team at the plate this year. They seem like they have more of a clue offensively. But running the basics, running the bases for one thing, they just seem like a lackadaisical, not fundamentally sound team. And if I'm going to sit through a crappy season, I sure want to know that my team is at least doing the fundamental things right.
And that's why it's surprising, because last year, and I'm a person that happens to like Pete Mackanin a lot, last year, he did all those things. And this year, it's a complete 180. It's like they forgot how to play baseball. And it's just over a span of last year to this year. And I'm not saying they have a whole lot of talent to win a whole lot of games, but it's like you'd expect to at least run out, the hits and everything. When you think a ball's going foul, like yesterday with the Double Herrera, you've had these problems before. Just run the minute you put contact on a baseball.
And that, to me, is a lack of respect for your teammates, and honestly, it's a lack of respect for your manager. It's that you feel that there isn't going to be that repercussion. The one thing you knew, and I mean, it was a whole different regime with Charlie Manuel, and very much, a guy that, all shucks Charlie. But Charlie Manuel had no problem calling out Jimmy Rollins, one of his most dynamic players. If I don't see that out of Pete, I will be off the bandwagon. If I don't see him start to have an attitude about things, take a stand, hold players accountable, I'm off the bandwagon, and I don't want to be, because I do believe in a rebuild, you need to keep stability. You need to not be overreactive. But if this team's not going to play good baseball and he can't get that message across, and the players won't be accountable to him, I saw it here with Brian Snitker, a career third base coach, a career bench coach, a guy who never got his chance to manage till he's 60 years old. And I see Brian Snitker doing a hell of a job in Atlanta.
John, when you look at this current roster, and I'm only talking about position players, and Herrera's been abysmal this year. Franco hasn't been good as well either. How many players that play every day do you think at least have a future with this team?
Well, from what I'm hearing, I'd have no problem with Hernandez being a part of the long-term future. I really wouldn't. And I tell you, I wasn't expecting out there to be the kind of player he is in the outfield this year. I wasn't expecting that, and he's been a pleasant surprise. But I do believe over the long term, some of these guys will be a little better. I'm telling you this, Franco on another team with more surrounding veteran talent, we wouldn't care. But when you're expecting him to be one of the building blocks, we do care. He could play somewhere else and be surrounded by 3 or 4 other veteran players that you could count on to do all the right things and everything, and I don't think we would make as big a deal out of it. But I like what the Phillies are putting together. I tell you this, the starting rotation should be better too.
No, it's been awful. It's been pathetic.
And they had a better rotation on paper by a mile than Atlanta. Mile.
We all over-evaluated that rotation.
Yes, and I did too. Raise my hand. Overvalued. But I do believe, by the way, I always have a rule. I don't look at standings till Memorial Day. I could not tell you right now the standings in the National League East, the standings in the National League. I really do try to stay away from it till Memorial Day, so I got another week. But what I will say is this, is that I was expecting to be more entertained. And last year, I was entertained watching a young Phillies team, and I was optimistic. And in 2 months, they've managed to suck some of the life out of it. Hopefully that's going to change. I'm not going to overreact, but I am going to voice my displeasure.
Wrapping up with John Kincade from 680 The Fan in Atlanta. A big-time Philadelphia sports fan, does the podcast, of course, with Shaq. Let's get to the Eagles. We just talked about confidence. Howie Roseman, I thought, had a nice offseason. Didn't plug long-term holes, but he did a nice job to get this team, what should be a respectable team and an improved team this year. How do you evaluate so far the job Howie's done going into this year?
Can I say A+? And I really don't want to say that because of Howie's track record. But I've loved what they've done because of the fact that I love that they saw that they had the young quarterback and they have to give him weapons and they had to do things to make him more comfortable. So I'm very, very impressed. I love bringing in the veteran receivers. I would not be one, and I would not, with a capital N, be lining up to give Jordan Matthews some sort of a huge, big money, number one wide receiver money. Would not be doing it. So I would I would certainly let him play it out and see how it goes. I like what this team has done. I love the LeGarrette Blount signing. Very, very happy with that. I still look at the secondary, though. And this offense better be good because this defense is going to be bottom third of the NFL. So you better be, and I would say there's 32 teams. This team's going to be 20, 21 or beyond. And so to me, this offense better be significantly improved. And that means run the ball with some sort of a consistency like you did in the beginning of last year. That sort of got abandoned a little bit. I think they got a little too pass-happy at times. But I am so excited for Carson Wentz. I can tell you, I can't think of an individual athlete since Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins, that I have been so excited to be a fan of and to get to watch his career grow. Because, Zach, if I'm wrong on Carson Wentz, then every guy that I know in NFL circles that I count on, the Chris Mortensons, personal friends that I've known for years, the Adam Schefters, and they sell every single one of them when we talk. I'll say, John, you got your guy. You got the guy who can win you a Super Bowl. And it gets me so excited, I just want to break into a cold sweat. I am a absolute fanboy or fangirl at that much for Carson Wentz. I love Wentz. I'm so excited. I can't wait for the season to begin. I really can't. And I'm not expecting anything big. Not expecting playoffs.
8-9 wins.
Not expecting competing for anything. 9 wins, I would love it. And I've said it before. there are things that I would dance in the front lawn of my underwear for. That would be one of them. If he goes 9-7 in his second year as a starter, and I continue to see the arrow pointed up for him, I am going to be so excited because I have no expectations on 2017. If they're in contention, if there are meaningful games in December, I think that would be I'd be giddy at that point. If after Thanksgiving this team was still in it, I'd be giddy.
Let me just follow up on something going back to the defense, because you said they're going to be bottom third. Last year, I don't think they were as great as what they said statistically, but they were ranked as the 12th best defense in all of football. The front seven, though, shouldn't it be a little bit better to at least get that defense somewhere out of the bottom third of the league? I know the secondary stinks, but
I just think that what happened is last year, as you notice, is that the defense sprung a leak. And I think there's some fool's gold in December. And look, I'm as big an Eagles fan as anybody. I love that team. It's the only team that I allow myself to be stupid about as a fan. But I can tell you this: I think there's some fool's gold in what happened in December. Don't overvalue the Giant win. Don't overvalue the Dallas win. Don't read too much into what happened in December. I think that when push came to shove after the beginning of the year, that defense leaked oil. And when you went up against good quarterbacks that had the opportunity to pick you apart, they did. And I think there's a lot of smart offenses on this schedule this year. There's a lot of teams that you're going to be considerably worried about, like when you go up against a Phillip Rivers, like when you go up against an Alex Smith. When you're seeing teams like that, a Derek Carr. There's going to be lots of smart quarterbacks that are going to right now. If you told me Derek Carr, Alex Smith, and gosh, I'm drawing a blank here for a second. As I was just saying it to you, for those three quarterbacks in the AFC West, I'm going to tell you right now, I'll set the over/under at 1,200 yards for those three games that those three quarterbacks pass for, and I think I'll bet the over.
Okay.
I think I'll bet the over.
Well, one more thing. Let me just bring up the coach in Doug Peterson. I was not a big fan of Doug last year. He got a lot on his plate for a first-year head coach, and the play calling, he has to figure that out if he's going to call it or if he's going to have someone else call it. Do you like the coach in Doug Peterson?
I do not like Doug Peterson, the coach. I'll tell you this. I like his game plans when he starts the game. Those 15 plays that he scripts out, I tend to be very impressed with those. But it would be like me if the category was quantum physics on Final Jeopardy. Doug Peterson has that look, even though I'm a proud Temple Owl and I'm very educated, that Doug Peterson has the look on his face like someone has asked him to decipher Mandarin Chinese. When the clock is running, I'm not confident in Doug Peterson. When the clock is not running, can he have his team prepared to play? Can he coach up a quarterback? Can he do some things? I do have a lot of faith in him. But, he had 1 year, and I'm not going to write that off after 1 year. But his first year gives me reason to pause because the most important thing, like Dan Quinn in Atlanta, Dan Quinn is now one of the coach du jour. Everybody's all excited about Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn is a spectacular motivator, pretty good defensive game planner. But Dan Quinn, when the clock is running, as was shown in the Super Bowl with a 25-point lead with 17 minutes to go, which I still won't let him forget about, that to me, when the clock's running, he's not at his best. And Andy Reid, great coach. But when the clock was running, were you always confident in Andy?
No.
Confident in him thinking on the fly?
Nope.
I'm confident in Belichick thinking on the fly. I think Doug Peterson is Andy Reid light. No pun intended. He's Andy Reid light. And I worry about that when the game's gone. But guess what? Year two, I'm willing to give him another year before I make any kind of grand judgments on what he is. But if he keeps developing Carson, he stays. That's to me. If he keeps developing Carson in the right direction, he stays.
Has there been a day since the Super Bowl, I know it's been some time now, where someone hasn't brought it up doing a show in Atlanta?
No, I bring it up every day. Are you kidding me? I'm the Prince of Darkness. It's just, and we talked about it today because Kyle Shanahan over the weekend
had the comments,
He finally admitted that they blew it in the fourth quarter with the play calling. Do you know it is May 22nd? And
it's a long time.
And Dan Quinn still has not admitted that they blew it in the Super Bowl, and he says he wouldn't do anything differently. And until the day he retracts that, I will continue to bang the drum as that is the most reckless, stupid, indefensible statement ever. Yeah, we would do everything. We wouldn't change a thing. He said it over and over. To me, it drives me crazy because it is absolute. That's ignorant. That's an ignorant statement, and I hope that he corrects it, and I think he will before training camp.
All right, last one for you, John Kincade.
Sure.
NBA, we know that the Celtics got a victory last night, but it really means nothing. It was a nice win for them. Cavs are still going to the finals, and they're going to be playing the Warriors. You have to make an early prediction on that. Cavs-Warriors, who do you go with?
Warriors 5.
Oh, that
maybe?
quickly?
Yeah, I think there's something about Cleveland that they were, first of all, the addition of Durant changes everything for me. Because the 7-game series that went down to the last 2 minutes, and Cleveland is not a distinctly better team this year, and the Golden State Warriors are with the addition of Durant. But what I would say is that, to me, Cleveland has a faux tough guy sort of look to them to me. The way that LeBron James melted down last night going after a local reporter because he didn't like a question, that, just being so petty, to me, tells me that he's not as cocky and as confident as he appears. And so to me, I would tend to believe that Golden State gets round 3 of this matchup.
What's on the DVR right now?
The end of the nurses' ball starts tomorrow on General Hospital. And the Chimera Project is about to be unleashed on Port Charles, a deadly toxin.
Well,
so,
enjoy it. Thank you.
See you, buddy. Take care, Zach.
You got
Later,
it. John
buddy.
Kincade joining us from 680 The Fan. Does a podcast with Shaq. He's got to have one of the best gigs in sports, just for like a local radio guy. And he also does national as well. He does some shows on CBS Sports Radio nationally, but he gets to do a show every day in Atlanta. And then, oh yeah, by the way, another one of those side projects, because that's his main job, from my understanding. Then you get to just do a podcast with Shaq. Imagine doing a podcast with Shaq, and I absolutely love, we'll talk about this later on in the show, best studio crews, best, most entertaining studio crews as well. What Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley do on an every other night basis in the playoffs is must-see TV. It is just so great what they do. And I guess Charles, he missed one of the games in this Eastern Conference final because they're doing the East with the Cavs and the Celtics. And I saw there was one picture put out on Shaq's Instagram, actually. And it was this like really big, fat man, and they were showing his rear. And next to it was Charles Barkley. And they go, and Shaq tweets out, "Oh, Charles Barkley finally got a statue." It was absolutely brilliant. 4:39, this is the Zach Gelb Show, Fox Sports 920 The Jersey. But I could watch Barkley and Shaq go at it all day. I remember once, I think it was the movie Lincoln that came out, and they're in some segment, and you just see Barkley just start laughing on air. And what they do is they go, "Oh, Chuck, what's so funny?" And he goes, "Oh, we were just talking about who our favorite president was." Like, out of nowhere, they're talking basketball. And he goes, first off, he prefaces it by saying, "First off, I absolutely love Barack Obama, but my favorite president ever is Abraham Lincoln." And they go, "Oh, tell him why. Tell him why." And let me remind you, it's Kenny Smith, it's Shaquille O'Neal, and it's Charles Barkley. And then you have the one white guy in Ernie Johnson. And Barkley goes, "Because if it wasn't for Abraham Lincoln, we'd be calling Ernie boss." That's what they were doing on live television. That is when I fell in love with that studio show. When they did that line about Lincoln. And I'm just like, you never know what you're going to expect. They just made that joke on national television. Had nothing to do with basketball, but I'll remember it always. All right, we'll take a break here. 4:40 straight up on the Zach Gelb Show on this Monday. When we come back, Dougie P., the man John Kincade has zero confidence in, and a man, quite frankly, that I don't have a lot of confidence in as well, going back to what he did in the Cowboys game, what he did also in the Giants game, the 2-yard challenge against the Packers, getting involved in the media, about, criticizing his team and then his team not showing up against the Bengals. All those things give me very, very little confidence in Doug Peterson. Well, when we get back, Doug Peterson was on the Ed Werder podcast. I think it's called Doomsday. We will play you some of that audio from that podcast coming up next on the Zach Gelb Show. Fox Sports 920 The Jersey, 920 AM in Bucks, Burlington, and Mercer counties, or worldwide on the web at 920thejersey.com. We'll take a break and be back with more sports talk right after this.